You have not eaten in 2 days, you know where the herd is, you tracked it yesterday and mapped the route. You just have to get there, then it starts raining. Not a drizzle. A heavy, soaking, wind driven rain that does not stop. All day, all night. And next morning it is still going. So you cannot hunt. The mud washed the tracks away, and wet rock under bare feet means a twisted ankle, which out here can kill you. The river is rising, and the fire, the one thing keeping you warm and predators back, is failing. You are not bored, you are trapped. For most of human history, rain was not an inconvenience, it was a crisis. And what people did during it may matter more than anything they did on a clear day. Today, when it rains, you shut the window, make coffee, pull a blanket over you. Rain is background noise. It makes you sleepy, but for a human, 50,000 years ago, that sound could kill you 3 ways before it stopped. The first is cold. Water pulls heat from a body far faster than air, and a soaked person with no waterproof shelter can slide toward hypothermia in hours. No Arctic conditions needed. The second is flooding. Caves and rock shelters. The best homes available often sat at the base of slopes or near rivers, so heavy rain meant water arriving fast. Archaeologists find flood sediment inside caves people lived in, and some shelters were never used again. The third may be the worst. Predators. Rain drove animals into shelter too, and sometimes the best shelter was the one you were in. At sites in South Africa, early human remains have been found alongside large cats, and some skulls carry puncture marks matching leopard teeth, so rain squeezed everyone into the same dry spaces. And in there, one job mattered more than anything: keeping the fire alive. Here is why that was terrifying. Controlling a fire and creating one are completely different skills. There is evidence of controlled fire use going back hundreds of thousands of years. At Kazim Cave in Israel and possibly earlier at Wonderwork Cave in South Africa. But tending a fire is not the same as sparking one in soaking conditions. If it died, you might not get it back. So people carried fire with them. Smoldering embers wrapped in green leaves or tucked inside a woody fungus that can hold a spark and smolder for hours, a biological lighter. And we know it was deliberate because of Ötzi, the man preserved in the Alps for 5,000 years. He carried a complete fire kit: tinder fungus, flint, iron pyrite for sparks, and spare tinder. Losing your fire was serious enough to carry gear against it. So when the rain hit, the first priority was not shelter. It was the fire. Move it deeper into the cave, shield it with hides, feed it carefully, not too much, not too little, and know where dry fuel hides. Dead lower branches under a thick canopy. The dry heart of a split wet log, birch bark, which holds an oily compound that lights even when damp. One person's whole day might be spent beside that fire, feeding and shielding it, because that fire was everything: warmth, light, safety, cooked food, the center of every conversation. Letting it go out was dangerous for everyone. The fire is holding, but you still cannot leave. So what do? You make things. The archaeological record is blunt. Caves are packed with evidence of manufacturing, stone tools at every stage of production, piles of tiny flaking debris, the chips that fly off as you shape a tool, concentrated in specific spots, exactly where someone would sit near firelight and work for hours. And not only stone. At Blombos Cave in South Africa, archaeologists found what looks like a pigment workshop roughly 100,000 years old. Abalone shells as mixing bowls, ochre ground to powder, bone tools for stirring and applying it. That is production. Someone sat in that cave, quite possibly with rain hammering outside, and made pigment on purpose. Now, here is where it gets surprising. At a Neanderthal site called Abri du Maras in France, researchers found a fragment of twisted plant fiber, 3 strands wound together, cord around 50,000 years old, the oldest direct evidence of string we have. And at Hohlfels in Germany, they found a tool carved from mammoth ivory with a row of holes and spiral grooves, red as a device for twisting fiber into rope. Someone sat in a cave and carved a rope-making tool. Making rope is slow, repetitive, and demands patience. A perfect bad weather job. And rope changed everything. It let you bind a point to a shaft, lash a shelter, set a snare, carry a load. A staggering amount of technology runs on string, and string was almost certainly twisted by someone waiting out rain. People were also making shelters livable. At Sibudu Cave in South Africa, archaeologists found bedding around 77,000 years old. Layers of sedges, rushes, and grasses arranged as sleeping mats, some topped with leaves from a plant that repels insects. Someone was not just surviving in there, they were making it comfortable, and the bedding appears to have been burned and replaced. Pest control, but that is the practical stuff. What comes next is something else, the art. Chauvet Cave in France holds paintings roughly 36,000 years old. Lions, horses, rhinos, bears, drawn with a level of observation that still stops people cold. The artists understood anatomy and movement. Animals mid-stride, muscles tensed, heads turning, not doodles. The work of people who watched these animals for thousands of hours, then rebuilt them from memory, underground, by firelight. And Chauvet is not alone. Lascaux, Altamira, and cave art in Sulawesi, Indonesia, dated to at least 45,000 years. Among the oldest figurative art known. But here is the detail that gets me. Much of this art is not near the entrance where you would shelter. It is deep inside, through narrow passages, in chambers you must crawl to reach. Someone carried an animal fat lamp into total darkness and painted. And think about when you do that. Nobody crawls into the back of a cave to paint when the weather is perfect and the hunting is good. You do it when you cannot go out. When it has rained 2 days, you have sharpened every tool you own, and there is nothing left but to go deeper into the dark and make something. We cannot prove cave art was a rainy day activity, but the logic holds. The greatest creative explosion in prehistory happened exactly where people were most likely stuck inside, and that leads somewhere bigger. Rain may not have just produced art, it may have produced culture. Think what happens when 20 or 30 people are shut in together for days with nothing to do. You talk, you listen, you share. One study compared daytime and firelight conversation among the Jew/Hwanzi in the Kalahari. By day, talk was largely practical, land, resources, complaints. After dark, most of it shifted to stories, singing, and ritual. Firelight changed what people were willing to say. The campfire was not only warmth, it was the first social network. And what moved around it was not small talk. It was survival. Where water dries up in summer, which plants are safe, where the good stone is, how to track an animal, critical information moving from one brain into another through speech. And beyond that, there were stories, explanations for why the rain comes and where it goes. Almost every ancient culture has rain mythology, and someone invented those stories. Most likely, while sitting inside the situation it explained. Here is how powerful that could be. Some Australian Aboriginal oral traditions describe coastlines drowning as sea levels rose, and researchers have matched them to real events thousands of years ago. Knowledge like that survives only if groups spend enormous time sitting together, retelling it. So rainy days were not dead time. They were transmission time. Knowledge moved from old to young, and the group's memory got refreshed. And here is the part nobody mentions. Rain was not always bad. Sometimes it was the best thing that happened. After heavy rain, the ground is soft, and soft ground means perfect tracks. Deep, clear, detailed. You can read which animals passed, how recently, how fast, and where. Some of the finest tracking conditions on Earth arrive right after the rain stops. And rain brought food. Mushrooms and plants appear suddenly. Tubers pull more easily from wet soil. Insects come to the surface. A wet spell did not shut the food supply down. It changed it. And groups who understood how had a real advantage. Termites are the perfect example. In parts of Africa, they swarm after rain. They are extremely protein rich, and you need no weapons. You just gather them. Chimpanzees still feast on swarms after storms, and early humans almost certainly did too. So, what did ancient humans do when it rained all week? Everything that mattered. They kept the fire alive, made the tools for the next hunt, stitched the clothing for winter, twisted the rope that held their shelters, ground the pigment for paintings deep underground, and told the stories that carried knowledge across generations. Then, when the rain stopped, they walked out onto soft ground covered in tracks and got back to work. Rain did not slow them down. It gave them time to prepare for what came next. Every tool, every garment, every story, every painting came out of downtime. Out of hours when they could not go out and had nothing to do but sit by a fire and think. Boredom did not exist for them the way it does for us, because when you are sitting in a cave with rain hammering outside and your survival depends on what your hands make in the next few hours, you do not get bored. You get creative. And that may be the biggest reason we are still here.